When our founding fathers established this republic, they created a political and economic system unique among nations, a system which has led the United States to the very pinnacle in wealth and in world leadership. This series of programs is being presented to help all of us understand better our advantages under our American way of life.
You can turn back now or learn the stuff they don't want you to know. Here are the facts. We've talked about propaganda before in our series on the infamous Edward Bernays, but what is it? The term propaganda comes from the Latin propagare. Originally, it applied to the Italian Congregazione de Propaganda Fide, or Congregation for Propagating the Faith. The modern definition dates back to World War I. Back then, propaganda was not seen as a bad thing. It was instead part of the war effort. But here's the second question. Is propaganda being used on you today? Here's where it gets crazy. Absolutely. And unless you're in a very isolated place, you are encountering propaganda every day. This can come in several varieties, religious, political, or commercial, but all of these types have a similar goal: to sway the viewer's mind, to convince you that their point of view is not just commendable, but indeed the only correct choice. The first large-scale propaganda campaigns in the United States occurred during World War I. These programs were run by the Committee on Public Information, an agency tasked with manufacturing domestic support for the war. Although this committee was eventually disbanded and the U.S. had no official propaganda programs during World War II, the administration worked around this constraint. Their answer? The Writers' War Board. This was a government-funded, privately owned organization that grew into what historian Thomas Howell called the greatest propaganda machine in history. A few years after the war, Congress passed the U.S. Information and Educational Exchange Act of 1948, better known as the Smith-Mundt Act. This gave the State Department the power to create media for audiences outside of the United States. Opponents said this gave the State Department the right to create propaganda. Concerned about this ability, especially after the actions of both U.S. and Nazi propaganda machines, Congress included several restrictions for the State Department. One of the most important of these was a prohibition on domestic use of propaganda intended for foreign audiences. While this distinction may seem difficult in a digital age where everyone with internet access is just a few clicks away, opponents of domestic propaganda feared that the State Department might begin presenting slanted international spin or public diplomacy as an objective truth. The Smith-Mundt Modernization Act of 2012 brought these fears to the forefront. Supporters of bringing foreign broadcasts like Voice of America to the domestic audience argue that this creates more transparency and that this division between foreign and domestic doesn't make sense in the world of new media. Opponents claim this will muddy the waters of public discourse, already threatened at times by closed-door agreements between government agencies and large media outlets. Oddly enough, both sides agree that when it comes to propaganda, there's something the U.S. government doesn't want you to know.